In this episode, we'll look at the revenge of the Overhead Projector, talk training center implications. I can't even get through that. How to view and evaluate big church events and some other disciple-making lens things with practical reinventing church topics. And we'll look at what's been happening this week. Happy 2025.
Yeah,
Derek.
2025.
Hello.
Here we go again. Season 2.
Wow.
Season 2, Danielle.
Whoever would have thought it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess if
It's been
it's if it's your first time hopping in with us.
Yeah.
My name's Danielle, and I've been working here at Grace for a couple years less than you.
The file is deep.
The file is deep. That's a good way to put it. Since I came in high school, so in 96-ish.
Yeah.
And then obviously went away for a little bit, but then came back and started working with you.
Yeah. And what do you do precisely?
Right, precisely. I lead our programming team, so that encompasses communications, marketing, some creative services like video, graphic design, a lot of content work, so not necessarily the sermon side of the content, but what flows out of that.
Yep.
For resources for people and blogs and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And podcast host extraordinaire.
Yeah, that's making the file deeper.
Yeah, and I'm Derek. I've been a pastor here since 1995, so a year before you arrived on the scene. I was working here, so been here a long time. This will be 30 years, 2025. This is my 30th year.
I hear you asking for a party.
Where's the party? Where's the celebration?
We got it. Don't even worry about it.
Where's James Earl Jones?
Don't even worry about it. On it.
Okay, so so I've been here, and really the idea of this podcast is, and we've got a whole first season, so hopefully you'll go back and check that out. But
you might need to just listen to some of it on 2x speed.
Right.
We were learning.
We were learning.
We still are.
I was going to say, I don't know. You're making it sound like this is going to be so much better.
It is.
Okay.
Okay.
So we are really just kind of talking through our journey. We're making a pretty big shift.
Yeah.
Grace is an old church, been around for a long time, since the 1890s. Started as the Swedish Baptist Church, and we've had a number of innovations along the way.
Yeah.
But certainly in my tenure, this has been the biggest. Mm-hmm. We're trying to lead our church from being a kind of a mega church and all the things that come with that model, attractional assimilation model, to more of a missional multiplication model, with an emphasis on discipleship and disciple making, and we're just kind of opening the book and talking through our journey as we walk through that. We're leading a church of a couple thousand people through what does that look like to be way more focused on different measurements than just butts in the seats and dollars in the plates kind of thing. Yep. And how do we look at discipleship outcomes and multiplication outcomes kind of through a different lens.
Yeah.
And so we're making lots of mistakes along the way, but we have some progress to report today, I think, as we've been off for a couple months here since before Christmas. And so, we can talk through some of that stuff. And we got some great guests coming for this season.
Oh, yeah. I'm super excited.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. So some people that, some of you guys may have heard from before that are doing great work in this area, some other pastors, people from outside here. We're having Dave and Shane in from Clarity House, who's really been the catalyst for a lot of these changes that we're making. They walked us through a 9-month process that was very, very helpful in setting a new course for us. So, lots of good guests.
It's gonna be good season. So one new section we wanted to try is the idea of Megachurch Memories. Since
we both lived through the age.
Oof.
I survived.
So there's a lot to undo.
And listen, I need to say before we get into this, I've said it multiple times to our church. I will never besmirch the impact of the mega church.
Yeah, sorry if I came off that way.
No, it's not.
I agree. I agree.
I realize this whole segment is going to come off that way. But I really do think that, I'm not going to say this every time, I promise, but I really do think that some of the principles of the mega church that happened in America in the 70s and 80s were 90s. Really in 90s, which is what we'll dwell on, was very, very beneficial for our country, for the church, for what the world needed at that time. And so, it's just that's been the model for now over 50 years. And it's like, it's time for us to maybe rethink the model.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to poke fun at some megachurch things.
But we love it. It's in love.
It's with
and learn some lessons, because there are some enduring principles, right?
Yes.
And lessons. And I think my first question, though, before we get into this is there a statute of limitations law-wise in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New York in terms of like abuse claims and things? I don't mean bad. I just mean like, sorry.
What are you suggesting?
I just mean we've slammed some kids on grounds and we've had them like drink weird things.
Yeah,
nothing bad. Just
we'll
like
leave youth
group,
ministry out of this for a minute because there were some retreat
I need
games.
to edit that out. That was so bad. Yeah, bad retreat decisions.
Yeah, there was not actual abuse that happened,
not.
Danielle. It was more like hitting people in the head with raw fish.
At least we have that soundbite now. Oh my gosh.
All right, so what are we talking about? Let's move.
We're talking about, speaking of abuse, the revenge of the overhead projector.
Right. So this is one
Love it.
Beautiful image, icon of the megachurch age.
Yeah.
It was somebody decided, you know what we need? We need to get people's noses out of the hymn books.
Yeah.
And get
Good goal.
and get their faces looking upward.
Yeah. And I think that's like the purest form of like the intention, right? Just, hey, everyone gazing forward and gazing up. Really, you're just looking at someone's butt crack most of the time. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, that was...
Have you seen the meme of the guy with the kind of big head and fat neck with the sunglasses on backwards in front of somebody in the pew?
That would be, yes.
Yeah, that's normally the view.
That's the view. Okay, here's the thing. I was thinking on the way in here today how much that actually changed worship in terms of like, obviously started super basic, right? Started just like letters on a clear thing.
Yeah.
Clear transparency, that's what they were called.
Right.
But that, for us anyway, in our church, pretty quickly evolved into, hey, could we use PowerPoint for this?
Right, yeah.
And we kind of went left with it. We kind of just started like building song, like we would get the song list. There was like a little team of us that did it. You did it, I did it, a couple other people. Tom Albert.
Yeah, Tom was our man.
Oh man,
Tom
he was like
the overhead
so
man.
faithful for so long.
Yeah.
And we would literally like pick images.
Right.
And like I don't know how we had the time for this.
Wait. You're moving way too fast.
Okay,
past
sorry.
The overhead moment. Think about what that was. This poor man
I know.
went front and center. Like literally you couldn't do this from the back. We have younger listeners who have no idea what this is.
Yeah, you had to be.
You had to be in proximity with that screen. So you're literally the star of the show. Like there's the vocalist and whatever, and there's the overhead guy like right in front of them. And you'd come out with a big stack of transparencies.
A folder.
Right? Every song in a different folder, manila folder.
Because remember that one band too would do extra songs.
Oh yeah.
Or like different songs or change or go into different things.
Yeah,
and
they would want to change. He'd go through his filing cabinet.
Like a DJ.
The problem would come is if like the band went off script or maybe those transparencies got back in there out of order.
Right.
And then
forget it.
All the fumbling, like because now the whole world is watching that screen, and that screen, was
it's
a carousel of shadowy hands. And wrong words,
upside down,
second
backwards,
verses on there. Upside down.
Oh shoot, they're going back to the chorus. Oh shoot, they're going back to the verse. Boom, bum, 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 bum. The couple times I had to do that was not fun.
Yeah,
not fun. I was way more later in the when it was a little more organized. But oh my gosh,
did you hear this though? I saw now I'm not going to have the reference, but I saw I think it was like on Relevant magazine or something like that, where some band is like going back to like for all of their concerts, they're doing it in small venues, and they're instead of the big screen behind them, they're going straight transparencies and overheads. I'll have to look it up.
I mean, it
maybe
would be
we
nostalgic.
Can, yeah,
it would feel, maybe we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
that would feel.
Dana, so what was what were the enduring? Enduring
principles. Yeah,
yeah. I think about some of those changes that like changed the church, even though the overhead was a little of an awkward stage.
Hey, I did it.
But I do think that whole getting people's faces up.
Oh yeah, that was number one for me.
It's like now all of a sudden we're not buried in a book. We're looking either at the screen or kind of it allowed us to look around. Mm-hmm. And I just think
more communal for sure. that way.
I think there's so much encouragement that comes from having eyes up in worship a little bit. And even, I've said before, like for me anyway, to be able to have my eyes up in worship, it's like there's some folks in the room that I know what they're going through.
Sure.
And to watch them worship and to see them raise their hand. And it's like, I know his wife just died this week and he is worshiping God anyway. And so I think there's great value in that. And obviously some people still love the hymnals and, to do that and to be able to sing harmony and be able to read the music. And like some of those are just skills that are bygone skills. But I do think there've been some, good enduring, benefits of that.
And I think too, some people might say this is a negative, but I think it also just opened up the library.
Yeah, exactly.
So you didn't have to wait for like the new hymnal to come out or like print a bunch of little booklets, for everybody. You could be doing a song that you heard at another church or at a conference or something like that pretty quickly, which was, I think a good thing.
Yeah. And I think it opened up in a lot of ways that digital space to the church to be able to use it. It is a little weird now how dependent we become on those screens.
Yes.
So like there's a very real sense that screen is driving. It controls a lot of what's happening in the room, and so if something does go wrong with the screen or whatever, it can have a real effect on the room.
Yeah, for
which
sure.
I'm not sure that's a good or bad thing, but it's a
weird.
reality.
Yeah, it's weird.
In a lot of churches. But anyway.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Overhead Projectors. There we go.
There we go.
Each week we'll bring back one weird thing.
Weird thing, yeah. That's a good one, though. That's a good one to start with.
Good memory.
All right, so we're going to talk, this is called Training Notes, this next chapter. In this chapter, we want to dedicate to an overflow of some of the internal staff trainings that we've had or staff Q&A that's been interesting as we've walked through. We might even like bring some staff in and have them ask, talk about kind of their parts of the journey. So today we're going to talk about how does our shift to become a training center impact existing leaders who like just honestly didn't sign up for that.
Yeah. And so the interesting thing about this question, I think I'm again, this podcast is hopefully to help other church leaders.
Yes.
And so we're just thinking that some of the trainings that we do with our staff, if we can kind of open the book on those, it might be helpful. Or some of the questions that we're dealing with staff along the way. Yeah, I know you just said all that, but I'm please. Restating it.
This is called mansplaining. Oh boy!
Oh, wow.
We might need to re-record this one.
This one we might need.
Sorry, everybody.
We started with abuse of the youth group.
I can't believe it.
Danielle, jeez. All right, so Anyway, this question actually came from one of our staff people because of this podcast.
Right.
And so we were part of it is I expect more of that just because we are talking about kind of leading edge stuff here and stuff before we have it figured out or before it's made its way through our organization. And so, we're batting around some ideas. And so one of those podcast episodes we talked about moving the church more from a teaching center to a training center. We talked about, even that some of our leaders were going to have to move through phases from like communicator to connector to coach to consultant, where we're actually really just kind of coming alongside people and helping them live out their faith or live out their calling. So anyway, particularly in our life group leader ministry, some of those life group leaders were like, hey, does this mean we have to, tell our existing leaders that their job is changing, or B, recruit different kinds of leaders to be small group leaders, which is a really good and insightful question. And so, I think what and the reason I think we want to include this question is because I feel like where we landed in that conversation when Jana came to us was, I think, a helpful new term that we were able to, and I actually did a training with our life group leaders already around this. But when we talk about how does their role shift, we've talked for a long time about those leaders being shepherds, kind of extensions of the pastoral function of our church, that in a big church you need more pastors than one or two because there's a lot of people. And but those words, coach, consultant, trainer, can be really intimidating, first of all. Yeah. And it could cause those existing life group leaders like, hey, I thought I was supposed to care for this group of people like a pastor, and now you're asking me to do something different.
These are my spiritual gifts. This is why I signed up for this.
Right.
Those don't sound like
me. Sound like what I'm,
fair.
what I signed up for. Yeah. And so really the word that we landed on, other than any of those I just mentioned, or even disciple maker, which is kind of the role, is this word activator. And I thought it was a really, Jana actually helped come up with the term as we kind of batted it around, but like, this is what we're really asking leaders at every level to do, because maybe they're not a consultant or a coach,
Right.
but part of the job of every leader in this new model, this disciple-making model, is to activate people's either faith or their gifts and their calling, and that, and it can be just be as simple as, at the end of every time we're together, just being like, hey, what's everybody gonna do about this?
Yeah.
And we really borrowed from, I'm not sure where, but this I will statement language of just kind of wrapping up every gathering with an I will statement of like, here's what I learned tonight and here's what I will do about it by next week. And then we can check in with each other. And so it's just kind of an added accountability. But it's a new way to think about, I think, those leadership roles that doesn't sound as intimidating as, you're going to be a consultant for these people or something like that.
And I think that word too takes a life group without, having to just redefine everything. It takes a life group from being insular and, just like, and this, not that this is wrong, but I think sometimes they can become like, come together, talk about sermon, talk about prayer requests, leave.
How's everybody doing?
How's it going? And our group has fallen into that too, but being able to ask that like simple question, either like the way you phrase it or what's God been telling you tonight? Yeah. What are you going to do about it? Like those kind of activating phrases. Yeah. I think that'll be really cool for all life groups, however much they adopt it. It'll be cool if we have like just a whole big list of questions and stuff. Yeah. I'm excited for it. Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's good. All right. So our Reinventing Church topic today, normally this is when we would bring in a guest or go to a Zoom call with a guest. And so as we tweak our assimilation model to have more of a disciple-making focus and invent a multiplication funnel to awake the lake, reach our region, we're learning as we go, as we said, and each week we want to have a topic to discuss in front of you in a practical moment of learning in the week. And so like I said, we'd normally bring somebody in and do a topic, but what we're going to do is kind of like some reflection since we've been off of this obviously church hasn't been off, but since not doing the podcast and working on some things. So we have
had a couple months of
just doing stuff. Yeah. So we have like 3 reflections. Yep. You want me to? Okay. So number 1.
Yeah, you go.
Okay. Reevaluate your definition of success for large scale events.
Yeah. So, and I want to throw back to you because this is a lot in your court. But, I think one of the challenges of kind of making the shift and having operated as long as we have in the model that we had, which is very much an attractional model. We want people to come to us. Yeah. And so we've built some programming over the years that is not easy to just kind of let go of in our new model. And so one of those things is a huge Christmas experience for our city. We basically rent out this big historic theater in the downtown of our city, and we've called it a Christmas Eve service for our community. And so really over the years, this year was our 9th year of doing it.
Yeah, we had a couple years off because of COVID.
Right. Yeah. But, over the years, really our community has embraced this event, and we've got, the leaders of the community come, and business leaders and political leaders, and, it's kind of like everybody's there, and we get to sing Christmas hymns together and get to share the love of Jesus with our city in that way. Yeah. So it's one of those things, like, as we're shifting into more of a disciple-making model, thinking small, not big, and, some of those things that we're throwing around, it's like, well, what do we do with Christmas at the Warner? Yeah. And because it does continue to have, I feel like if it stopped having an impact, we would have stopped doing it long ago.
Yeah,
but
we just look at it every year.
Stories of, like, this is when I came to Jesus. This is when I, started to re-engage with a church, whether it was this church or another. Christmas at the Warner was this kind of spark. And so, we decided it's not a thing we're ready to give up quite yet, but in this new model, how do we think about it differently? How do we approach it differently? And even, again, we talk a lot about measuring on this. What do we measure how do we measure success maybe in a different way? And so why don't you talk about some of the shifts that we've made? I just saw one of the things that sparked it, I just saw the evaluation tool come through from you, and the evaluation questions. I'm like, yes, that this is demonstrating how we've shifted our thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's obviously not perfected by any stretch, but we definitely have taken some, I think, really cool. Well, first of all, just in the programming of the experience and in the way that we engage with volunteers. The other impact, not only in our community that this has, is it has a humongous impact on like the volunteer culture here.
Right.
Which sounds dumb, but I didn't fully understand until this year when we started talking about it differently, because that wasn't a huge, it was a little bit of a measure, but so hearing like we had 300, more than 300?
301.
There we go. Volunteers at this event over the course of the 2 days is crazy. So it was cool to sit with the planning team and have them kind of dream about like, how do we engage them in the room when they're taking the breaks and doing the things, and a lot of first serve people. So there's a lot of like workflows coming out of this to get them, engaged in the regular life of the church and things like that. So that was cool.
Well, I even love like before the service itself and all the planning that goes into that, there's like a whole different level of planning for those volunteers even before we get there. And I love the kind of stuff that we were doing there. Can you just explain that, like volunteer gathering ahead and the prayer? And
we ended up, I think it was like a year ago.
Yeah, last year we started.
We started just going to the theater the week of or the week before, and they just because they partner with us, they just kind of let us do it for free. And we just gather in a huddle. We have to hand out like lanyards for security and things. So we make that kind of like a reason to also come. And then we just have time with people to vision cast what this is about, why we're doing it, what part they can have in it. And then they get to kind of tour around, like especially people who have never done it before, tour around and see like, okay, so when I show up next week, this is where I go, this is where I meet people, blah, blah. And they get to meet each other. They get to start to build community. And I feel like that's a new kind of invaluable piece of the whole puzzle.
Two other little logistical things that I thought were so cool that night was, first of all, those teams get to pray together.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So they tour and walk around and then they pray together for what God might do. And the other thing I loved is that we gave them a little cheat sheet of like how to ask great questions. Yeah. And so, and it was on, I think it was on
the back of the
thing. So now all of a sudden we're equipping people with like, we're saying, hey, it's not just important that you do your job when you get here and do whatever hand out the candles or whatever your job is. Like the big thing is to connect with people and to ask good questions. And we're actually gonna give you a tool to help you ask good questions. Yeah. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good innovation.
So, but talk about the evaluation afterwards.
Yeah.
Like what were some of the things that we were evaluating versus just how many people came and whatever.
Yeah. So we basically, I just thought like just through our conversations that we've had over the course of the past couple of years, we asked about, did you have any, like list out if you had any meaningful, I just left it open-ended, like meaningful conversations with anyone, whether volunteer or attendee, and just open-ended, like text box kind of a thing. This is all very difficult to measure, but at least it's like, it's just, we're at least like flexing that storytelling muscle.
Well,
I
and
guess.
not only that, we're clarifying what we're saying.
Yeah, we're
These
saying
are
this
the
is
important
the
things.
win. Yeah. So meaningful conversations. We asked, did you hear any stories worth sharing? We got some good things out of that. And then, did you meet or observe someone who would make a great leader? I thought that would be important just to see. Sometimes with those big scale events, like these rising stars come up, and then everyone's exhausted and like you never think about them again until the next year, So that we got some good names out of that too, which was really cool.
That's great.
And I think as you're saying, I'd love to obviously every year look at this and say, is this still impactful? Is it still doing what it needs to do? One of the things I think is cool to think about is like, are there things on the assimilation side that we need to do to keep momentum? This may or may not be one of them, that we need to like keep momentum going in a certain way, but think about them differently so that they're serving the purpose that we need them to serve, and they're directing people in the ways they need to go to be more focused in this way.
Yeah, that's really good.
So that's number one.
That's number one. Reevaluate your definition of success for large-scale events.
Yeah.
Number two, and we talked about this last season a little bit as it relates to classes and courses. This is a little bit different, and so we'll break it down. But if I were to sum it up, I would say learn from the people you need to resource. And so we talked last time about piloting things and kind of learning about how our things that we're creating are landing. This is even almost a step back from that as we're, inventing what we're calling the multiplication funnel. And so the assimilation funnel for most churches is this whole attend, connect, serve. We're trying to move people in from just attending on a Sunday to connecting to a group to serving on a team. So we're tweaking that to make it more discipleship focused. But we've said we're actually inventing a whole new funnel that helps people understand how they're called, and then we want to train them in that calling, and then we want to send them out to do the work of God in the world, and really reverse the question from what can you do for the church to what can the church do for you. So we have these business people and people in education and people who are trying to be a light in their neighborhood and people who are starting or serving on nonprofits. And, so all of these outside the walls people who are trying to live out their faith. And, we say till we're blue in the face, the church has been over-inspired and under-trained. So a lot of people just don't know how to do that, and I've told you, I had a conversation with a person who has an amazing influence, stands in front of teams that he leads every single day. And I asked a very simple question. I said, how do you integrate your faith into that circle of influence that you have? And he said, this is a Christian for a long time. I never thought about it. It never crossed his mind that his faith would intersect with that moment. And so, we do have an uphill battle, but it's how do we help people? How do we resource people who are in the thick of it, in the real world, and go, man, you could live out your faith powerful. This is what discipleship is. It's not something that happens for an hour on Sunday. This is something that happens for your whole life. And so anyway, we have an uphill climb here because we haven't really thought much about that before. What is the church? We've thought about it.
Yeah. It seems like a simple, duh, but no.
Right. No, because there's no infrastructure for that.
Right.
There's no staffing infrastructure. Right. There's no resourcing infrastructure. Yep. There's really not a lot out there to borrow from.
No, there's not. My Google searches are crazy. It's true.
So part of it is just how do we do a better job? What do people actually need?
Right.
And so some of our leaders, including me, have been having lots of just one-on-one conversations with people who are, leading outside the walls or serving outside the walls in some way that we've taken notice of. And it's really just a lot of question asking, how are you doing? What are you doing? How could we help? What do you need? Those sorts of questions. But,
I think is interesting on the other side of it, these bright spots that you guys are finding. Some of them, it's funny that they are kind of the opposite. They're kind of I never thought about why it's natural.
Right.
And so helping them deconstruct too, to figure out what principles are you actually using? Because it's so natural for the ones that are super successful at it.
Yes.
That we're finding anyway.
Yes.
I'm sure there's people that have slogged through and figured it out too, but that's just been an interesting thing as well.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Just this is just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So one of the things that we've done, we did it twice. We've done some larger group brainstorm sessions with marketplace leaders of a variety of different kinds. So you've been in those, and so some of our staff were kind of table leaders in those big group brainstorms. And we basically just tried to collect up ideas, let people talk openly about, what Christian resourcing could look like as they live out their calling, what can the church do, and did some heat mapping around all the responses and all that kind of stuff. And really, I found it was interesting and affirming that a lot of the stuff that came out of those raw conversations were stuff that we were thinking about already.
Which is good.
And so there was a little bit of a match there. And really the top three, when we did that heat mapping, the top three needs that emerged out of that group were, they said, relational support and networking. So this idea of connect me with other people who are trying to do this. And so if there's a businessman or woman who's trying to live out their calling by leading a Christian business, they're like, man, if I could be in a cohort with 4 or 5 other people who are trying to do that, we could talk best practices and encourage each other, and even do some coaching around that. That would be awesome. So I think that relational support networking. Second was tools and resources. So like getting some stuff in their hands that would help them to integrate their faith with how they're trying to live it out. And then the third was kind of like technology resources, which was fascinating too. So, I think that just what we're sitting in right here, we've got a studio here at Grace, and it's like some of those things that we happen to have, to leverage those for people who are trying to live out their calling would be a cool thing. So learning from the people you need to resource has been a big one. Do you have any takeaways from any of those gatherings, or anything that like pops into your mind of like, wow, that was interesting to sit in those tables?
It was cool. Like it was neat to hear, kind of like get some things affirmed, but then also watch. I didn't partake in the discussion, like the big discussion in front of the room, but like watching you guys kind of move around ideas that weren't good.
Right.
Like, we've done that before. Like without saying we've done it, it doesn't work,
Right.
But it's funny how everyone, I don't want to say everyone, oftentimes the culture will lean back to just do it for us. And they don't mean that. These are all like really good, well-meaning people. It's nothing, but like the ideas are like, build us a directory of things that we can, or do this thing for us, or match us with one for one, like all those kinds of things. And you got to just get through those ideas. But like, just how we will like fall back on old things. I think anybody thinking of through this, again, because there's no infrastructure, it's all just like a wide open field. You lean back to what you know, which is things you can create, measure, see clearly,
Yeah.
So that was kind of neat to like watch everyone navigate that together.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And actually, and kind of what we're doing here, like for Christians in the room, it's very easy to just fall back on the church experience of my past.
Yeah.
And so like, I was in this church and we had a church directory and all the plumbers made themselves known and all the roofers and the people who did IT or whatever, and everybody knew and we just hired the other Christians and it was great.
Yeah.
And it's like, we start wading into those waters, and it's like there's lawsuits. And there's
it's not all roses.
People get left off the list. People,
it's no good.
People come just to get on
to
the
get
list.
on the list, and then you're like, am I on the list? How do I get on the list? Yeah.
It becomes like a big advertising marketing.
It's like the temple courts.
That's right.
Okay, that's good. That's great.
One?
Number 3, break the mold of traditional church hiring practices.
Yeah.
We're in this one
deep. And so
it feels deep because it feels like, sorry, you want to explain it first?
Say it.
It feels like there are some very strategic hires we need to make right now.
Yeah.
And if we could only just wait a minute. But we can't.
We can't.
To make sure we do it right, but we can't. So that's why it feels, to me, that's why it feels like.
Well, to make sure we do it right, and part of it is that we're trying to change things.
Right.
And, it kind of just goes back to that last thing. We just say it's easy to drift back into your old habits because, like, we're asking the question, again, if we have these 2 funnels, an assimilation funnel and a multiplication funnel, that, like, half of our effort is going to be outside the walls.
Right.
Our current arrangement of the way we do staff is not going to work for that model. Like, we have to think about what kinds of people do we need to bring in or hire or recruit or whatever that are going to help us to change this church's model. And like you're saying, the old way is running like a freight train still, and we have to staff it. Like we have to get stuff going. And I wrote a book about this, but like I feel like the church has gotten staffing wrong generally for a long time now, that we've just like thrown out the biblical principles and adopted the world's model and just be like, we're headhunters, we're looking for the best skills, we're looking for the when what you see in Scripture is something very different than that. But it's hard to, especially when there's skill specific jobs that you need, that even in a large church like ours, we may not have people in our pipeline that have that exact skill set.
Right.
And so then you have to ask the question, do we not need that position? Do we wait on that position? Or do we do what we've always done and go try to hire somebody?
Right.
So.
I mean, this is also kind of this is going into like kind of what happened this week too.
Yeah,
but,
please.
So you're kind of saying this, like our approach has been, is there a volunteer who would be lit up by doing this? Is there somebody who has this skill set who could just like lead and go crazy and make this happen?
Yeah, that's always the starting point.
It's always our starting point.
Yeah.
And I think for your, just the culture you've created, and Aaron has created, I feel like that's why we do that. And it's for our health and for our good, in my opinion. But so then we'll go kind of toward the paid thing usually. And so and even then when we hire somebody, we want them to be kind of, even in a skilled position, in my opinion, we want them to be they have to be a little bit equipping, a little bit doing in a skilled position is what I'm talking about. And I mean like tech or, something like that.
Yep.
And so one thing I've been interviewing people for a couple different roles. And one thing I changed about the interview questions was painting a picture for them of not just like a flowery picture of like volunteer culture, but literally putting like percentages. So I'm saying to them, like, you need to get your brain around the fact that you're going to be 60% people development, 40% task. And for a tech person, that's like, dirt, like, what? But it's
wait,
true.
I can't hide behind the soundboard 100% of the time.
Yeah. So like that, and it has to be for us and to even, if we're going to hire like a traditional role, like a tech, whatever, bare minimum, they have to have a different mindset about how to do tech so that they can multiply.
Right.
It's interesting. It's been interesting. And Matthew, if you take this job, just know I believed in you from the beginning. But I just want an example. So like this person that's coming in to interview, I almost just hired him over Zoom because he said to me, hey, I don't mean to be this to come off wrong or whatever, but you're talking a lot about like people, 60-40. You're talking about like volunteer culture. You're talking about, can I ask like why you're hiring on the outside instead of like someone who's already there? And I was like, exactly. I'll see you in a week. But it was cool. Like he's younger and he has like
but he gets it.
He gets it, I think.
Showed he gets it.
Yeah, he shows he gets the principles. So and everyone, I feel like all three of our departments are kind of hiring or getting in that season of hiring. And it feels, I don't even know if I can articulate. It feels like I just want 20% more information about us.
Right.
Not about the person, the people. I mean, I would hire 3 people tomorrow.
Right.
And just hope.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So principle, And just, I think for us, and again, this is hard to stumble through because we're literally learning this right now. But like, I would love to look at like we moved over to using Working Genius and Widget. I think that has helped in the hiring process because you're seeing like, okay, what way is this person going to lean? Are they going to be able to equip people? Are they going to, are they going to struggle with it? That kind of thing. And I think through equipping, because I think that's at least in my department, that's a way to multiply, at least bare minimum. Like I might not know like what we need to multiply in the studio right now or what those kinds of things, but if I know that the person can train people, I think we could get there. Yeah. But again, it feels like trepidation.
Yeah. Like, and I guess what I would say is this is a good example. I think this, obviously like a tech position for a person like ours. And again, we're operating a studio. We do a ton of things that are like, audio visual stuff, including our weekend services. But way beyond that, there's like a lot of other things that we believe is part of the future of the church. And so this is one of those I think that we've come back to and just go, this is important. We need to prioritize making sure that this position is filled. I think what I would say to other church leaders out there, maybe smaller church leaders, there's people listening to this going, must be nice to be able to just hire a tech, and so or to even be having this conversation. And it's like, I think that I think one of the reasons we're kind of slogging through right now is because of this tension. And I think this is a universal principle of just going, I really think it's important for leaders to go, what are those core important roles that I need somebody in, and where do I need to be creative with the role?
Yeah.
And maybe free myself to do some of this other thing because I would be more creative. And so, like, my classic example is just going, if you're spending 20 hours a week preparing a sermon and researching and writing and doing all of that, and going, and I really need to hire, a youth pastor. Like, I have to hire a youth pastor. Well, maybe the move is, because maybe you don't have a volunteer youth pastor in your church or somebody in that orbit, maybe the move is to go, but I do have a researcher in my church who could help me on the sermon side. And man, if you could take the sermon prep from 20 hours to 12 hours and you free up 8 of your hours a week, maybe you're the one that needs to step into that youth role for a minute and lead that and so sometimes it's just that like brain shift. And I feel like there's a lot of those going on right now for us of like, what do we actually need? What do we not need? What are those core roles? What do we need to be creative about and go, we can get by with this role with kind of a part-time focus, but so that we can go after this other one. And I think that's good. Maybe the universal principle is just to go, don't be afraid to be creative about kind of the traditional roles and traditional hiring practices or, whatever. I think there's room to be had for the church to think differently about staffing than we do think right now.
Yeah, agreed.
So, yeah.
Yeah, talk to us in a month. Let us know.
Exactly.
Okay, I think that's it for today, right? So if you like this episode, you can tell us by leaving a rating or review, 5 stars if you did. You don't want to miss what's next. Like Derek said, we have a lot of good guests coming. And so you can subscribe right now wherever you listen to your podcasts and help a friend by sharing this with them. And you can find detailed show notes and related resources over at dereksanford.com/reinventing church. And that's where you can also submit your own questions from the own questions to us that you might want us to address as we're learning, and subscribe to his weekly newsletter to get all the latest free tools and posts. And you're still doing the top 3 thing, right?
Yeah.
Top
some of my
threes.
Favorite things.
Yeah, favorite things of the.
It's not always 3. But it's my list of favorite things.
Okay, list of favorite things.
Yeah.
Cute.
So so that's all kind of stuff. People should subscribe.
Yeah,
it's a fun
cute.
list.
I shouldn't say cute. Informative.
It's fine.
It's fine.
But
okay.
it's a big ranging thing from like favorite book I read to favorite tool I use, favorite vacation spot we've gone to, like all kind of crazy stuff.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Fun.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
we'll see you
everybody.
next time. Go Chiefs. Bye. Just kidding.